Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel Armag for All. Because Crysis 1 was a no-go in terms of HDR, I'm happy to announce that Crysis 2 is completely opposite. This game looks very nice in HDR. There's a difference between Crysis 1 and Crysis 2 like day and night. This looks awesome. And I have very great news for you. This game, Crysis 2 Remastered, supports the PlayStation 5 HDR Calibration Menu, and I'm quite sure the same counts for the Xbox Series, but I can't prove it. That means it is very important what you set up in this menu because it will affect the game. So make sure you use the HDR picture mode, what you like to use, like dynamic tone mapping on, off or HGiG. And by the way, I would not recommend to play this game in dynamic tone mapping off. I will show you just quickly how to set it up with HGiG, but the same counts for dynamic tone mapping on. So what you can read actually as the instruction says, we should set up the sun until this symbol is barely visible. But what we learned from many other YouTube channels, we shouldn't do it like this. So we should set up the symbol barely visible and then we go one tick ahead, and the next counts for this page as well, barely visible right now, and then one tick more. This page on the other hand, complete the way down, okay, until this is grayed out and you can't go further, then you're good to go. So this is actually really great news, but there's also something weird in the game and I will show you what I'm talking about. When I learned that this game supports the HDR calibration menu on the console, at least on the PlayStation 5, but again I'm quite sure for the Xbox Series counts the same, I was actually a little bit confused when I found those options in the settings menu. We have HDR on off, white point and HDR brightness settings. So I was not expecting settings like this when we having actually a native support from the HDR calibration menu on the PlayStation 5. So not quite sure why we have these settings, but what I found is it really doesn't matter how you calibrate your PlayStation 5 menu with dynamic tone mapping on, off or HGiG. The settings here are always the same. Of course, HDR must be set to yes. White point is 100 and HDR brightness is 50. At least this counts for my LG CX, and I have really a very nice HDR picture with those settings. And to make sure that you understand how important this menu is in this title, I like to show you what is happening or how the picture looks like when you do it in the wrong way. So let's say we're using HGiG and we're doing it in a complete wrong way, like this and like this and like this. So now we can see actually the symbol, and now we're jumping back into the game and I will show you how it looks like. And this is what you end up with the complete wrong settings. And yeah, just have a look on this sun or whatever. You can't see any details anymore because it's just blown out. And the most important thing between HGiG and dynamic tone mapping off, there is no difference. And usually if you have nice HDR effects, there is a big difference when you turn on HGiG, okay? So the same counts for objects like this. Have a look how this looks like. And again, there is no difference at all. So that means we have set up HDR on the PlayStation 5 in the complete wrong way. Now let's do it in the right way. And what we're doing now is not the right way, but I like to prove a point. So we're still in HGiG mode, and what we're doing now, we're pressing the button and wait till this is not longer available. And we do the same here. And now we're going with this completely down again. And now we're jumping back into the game and you will see a very big difference. Okay, so now we're back again and I'm quite sure you can see now a very nice sun. And when I'm changing this between dynamic tone mapping off and on, or HGiG on and dynamic tone mapping off, you can clearly see a very big difference. So this is the proof that the PlayStation 5 HDR menu or calibration menu is doing what it is supposed to do. A very big nice difference, and therefore it is very important what you set up in this menu. So it doesn't matter really if you like to use dynamic tone mapping on or HGiG, you have to set it up in the correct way, okay? That's very important. And now let's talk about my recommended settings for this game. Before we start talking about my recommended settings, let's talk about the maximum peak brightness, what I was able to measure in this game, Crysis 2 Remastered. So it is very important, of course, again, how to set up your PlayStation 5. So because the internal HDR calibration menu has an impact on the game, we just can't switch between those modes because it will not work as expected, okay? So I set up the PlayStation 5 in dynamic tone mapping on, and I was able to measure 709 candela on a very bright object. So when I went back into the menu and I set up my PlayStation with HGiG, on the very same object I was able to measure 569 candela, which is a big difference. And then I started thinking, what the heck is going on? And I found something very interesting, and I like to talk about this. Because I found such a very big difference between dynamic tone mapping on and HGiG in terms of the maximum peak brightness, I started to play a little bit around with those settings from the PlayStation 5 calibration menu. And what I did is, and I know it doesn't sound right, but feel free to try it and then put in a comment section what you think about those settings. So I set up my HDR picture mode to dynamic tone mapping off. I went in this menu and I set it up the following way. So make sure you can't see the symbol at all, and then go 2 ticks back. The same here. You can't see the symbol at all, and now 2 ticks down, okay? So now I can barely see it, okay? So this again, complete down. We like to have a perfect OLED black, and now let's go back into the game. Okay, back in the game, dynamic tone mapping off is still selected, but now we're changing this to HGiG. Can you actually see the difference? There is a big difference, and what I found is now I was able to measure the very same object. Instead of 569 candela, we had now 700 candela in HGiG. So also what I have to say, I have to admit it, it looks like to me with this approach of setting up the PlayStation 5, you will lose minor details when you use this with HGiG, very minor details. It is almost not visible, but when you look very close, like, let me explain this to you, like this lamp here, when you look very close, it looks like to me that dynamic tone mapping on now is doing a better job. So now we can actually change between those modes because the setting on the PlayStation 5 is now very close to dynamic tone mapping on. And it looks to me that on very bright objects like this lamp, dynamic tone mapping on shows you a little bit more details. But again, now we're measuring 700 candela instead of 569 candela, which is much better. And you lose just minor details, almost not visible. So this is, in my opinion, the way to go, the way to calibrate the PlayStation 5 and then use HGiG. And I know that this doesn't sound right, and many YouTube channels actually, recommending a different way, but to be very honest, I don't care, because if I don't like the picture, then I don't like the picture. With my recommended settings or approach, I like the picture. So do me a favor, try this out, okay? So calibrate your PlayStation 5 with dynamic tone mapping off, set it to HGiG, go into the game, make sure that the HDR settings actually set to white point 100 and HDR brightness to 50. This is very important. And then just put in the comment section what you think about this setting, because in my opinion, that's the way to go. Okay, and if you don't like my approach in terms of HDR calibration on the PlayStation 5, the wrong calibration settings, then all what you have to do is actually go to the PlayStation 5 calibration menu, choose the mode what you like to play with, calibrate your or change the settings according to the screen information, and you're good to go. Make sure that you leave those settings here, white point and HDR brightness, in the standard settings, which is white point is 100, HDR brightness is 50, and of course HDR must be set to yes, and then you're absolutely good to go. This game, in my opinion, has some great HDR effects, and nothing else to say, to be very honest. And the gameplay is also very, very nice, and I will do a first impression video from this game as well, because I really, really like it. I have to admit, I really like it. I like it actually much better than the first part. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, in terms of HDR, I'm very surprised with this game because I was not expecting this, to be very honest. But this is, yeah, good news. So and now, of course, I really like to know your opinion about the HDR implementation in this game. And of course, I'm very keen to know about my recommended settings, what I like, what I'm using at this very moment with the, yeah, wrong calibration on my PlayStation 5, okay? So in diesem Sinne, if you're new to my channel, leave me a comment, leave me a like, and if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Thank you very much for watching me. I see you guys next time.